So I'd like to welcome everybody today to PowerBuilder TV. Today we're going to show you how to take your applications to the web in 3 easy steps. Armin Mazda joined Appeon as a key member of the initial team and is now the company's CEO and president. He's worked with Sybase and PowerBuilder technologies since 2000 and served various roles in Appeon, including product management, business development, and operations. Armin is a graduate of the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley and holds 5 U.S. patents in the area of rich Internet application technologies. Welcome, Armin.
Thank you, Megan. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Today we will be going over Appeon for PowerBuilder and showing you specifically how you can get your app to the web in just 30 minutes. I had noticed that quite a few of the attendees had seen Appeon before. For those of you who have seen Appeon before, as well as the rest of you that will get introduced to Appeon today, I would encourage you to join our next upcoming webcast that will talk about the latest new features in Appeon 6.2, so you can get a feel for how the product has been changed over the last couple years and how it will help you to be more successful with your web project. And again, that will be scheduled probably in about a week to 10 days, so please look for that email. So just to give an overview for everybody, what is Appeon for PowerBuilder? It is an add-on to PowerBuilder, not a replacement, that enhances the functionality of PowerBuilder. Specifically, it will enable you to deploy your PowerBuilder projects to either .NET or Java platform as rich Internet web applications rapidly and easily. The process is automated and requires only your PowerBuilder development skills. You can see on the left-hand side we have the original source client-server application. After automatic web deployment, you end up with the exact same result, but within a web-based architecture. There are thousands of companies worldwide that have been using Appeon, and many more are joining each day. The reason for this is that Appeon delivers superior ROI. Specifically, you will get 4 key benefits. First, it is the shortest development time and lowest cost. We have seen a minimum of 4 times increase in the productivity and speed of a project, where a web project can be completed within just a few months or even few weeks. Secondly, with Appeon, you have the least project risks for your web project. No matter you're a PowerBuilder developer building a new application or you have an existing PowerBuilder project that you need to web enable. The reason is that you will not have to rewrite your entire code base. You will not have to re-architect your application for the web interface, going page by page metaphor. You will not have to retool your engineering team to work with a different programming language and tool and so on. And most importantly, you won't have to disrupt your end users, retrain them to work with different tools that they may not be used to. Appeon offers the most powerful web deployment. We have tuned the Appeon product for over a decade, and currently we're handling applications over 600 megabytes worth of PBL source code. And we provide the most robust feature support, including offering powerful desktop integration and a rich web user interface. So, for example, your web application can integrate with hardware at the client side, with third-party software, and so on, where really the lines between your web app and the desktop blur, and you can enable an excellent user experience and produce very productive business applications. Lastly, Appeon product has been tuned over the last decade to offer extraordinary performance and scalability. Because at the end of the day, even if your application is converted to the web and it's working, if the performance and scalability is unacceptable, nobody would use your application. And that is really where our product shines. We have put a number of built-in automatic features to boost your performance and scalability, so there's less work for you to do, which is really the key goal of Appeon, is to make your ability to take your applications to the web very easy and very fast. And I had just talked a little bit about the 4 times productivity advantage of PowerBuilder Appeon versus typical .NET web development. And here what we did is we leveraged a study that Microsoft put out. This is actually several years old, but it's still relevant. Microsoft had used Visual Studio.NET to build an ASP.NET web form and just illustrated how productive Microsoft tools are and .NET development. And we at Appeon really believe that PowerBuilder is one of the most productive tools out there. And we set out to do a comparison to the Microsoft study. We developed the same application using a quarter of the lines of code, using only 1 week instead of 4 weeks of time to complete the project at 1/8 of the resources or 1/8 of the cost. So that translates into great savings for your company. For example, if today you have, for example, 3 or 4 PowerBuilder developers working in your organization, you would need probably 12 .NET developers to accomplish the same thing. If your application today, and we have some applications that are very large that has maybe, let's say, 1 million lines of code, that would be 4 million lines of code in ASP.NET, which would make it exponentially more difficult to debug and manage the project. And, if you're budgeting, for example, let's say 500,000 soft dollars, to web enable your application. Well, with Appeon, that would only cost you $70,000 worth of engineering resources and so on, so you could accomplish it much faster. So that's just quantifying a little bit about some of the benefits of Appeon. And now we're going to get into the heart of today's webcast, which is really understanding the 3 easy steps that it takes to web enable your existing application or build a new one. The first step would be to analyze your application for potentially code that is unsupported on the web or some code that may benefit from being rewritten in a more optimal way to run over internet, which can be a slower network. Generally, an Appeon application does not require a lot of work to be performed to get it onto the web. Really, again, you're just talking a couple months or even weeks, depending on your situation. And we do offer tools to help you perform this analysis so you could quickly get a sense at what you're looking at. And those tools are all included with the product itself. And there's also a trial version of the product available, which you can download from the Appeon website, www.appeon.com. And so you can use those tools and run it through your application and get a sense at what you're looking at for your project. Once you've analyzed the application and you understand the issues that are flagged, then the step 2 would be to devise workarounds for those unsupported features. So this would be using standard PowerBuilder programming. You're not doing anything really new. It's actually just looking at how could you write that PowerBuilder code in a different way that is Appeon compliant, or how can I take all these embedded SQLs and so on and optimize it, maybe move it to a stored procedure or so on. And again, it may not be necessary. It just depends on your specific application. The last step is actually very straightforward. It's what you've been doing over and over again, and you're masters at this, which is writing PowerBuilder code, testing it, using your existing tools, for example, PB Delta to compare the source code differences, a visual expert to do impact analysis on the changes you've made to your application, or, for example, WinRunner or QuickTest Pro to do automated regression testing of your application. So really, that whole step of developing and coding is all done in PowerBuilder and is all as you have done before. Is really not going to be a change. And so let's go ahead and actually take a look at that. I'm going to open up PowerBuilder 11.5, and Appeon is compatible with previous versions of PowerBuilder as well. So if you're on 10 or 9 or even 8, you don't have to upgrade if you don't want to. You can still take full advantage of Appeon and get all the same Appeon features on the web. So as a first step, what you would do is you would configure your new project. Here are all the projects I have already configured. If we were configuring a new one, it's quite simple. You click on the config wizard, and it will walk you through the whole process. You give your application a name and a URL, and you can select a different deployment mode. Release mode would be what you would use when you're ready to roll this out to your users. During development, you could use a debug mode. Click Next. You select the workspace. Then you select a target, which will automatically select the pibbles associated with that target for you. And you select your PowerBuilder version. In my case, I'm using 11.5. Click Next. Select your local server or whichever server you will deploy to by default. And Appeon can be configured to deploy to multiple servers, for example, a remote web server. Select the database you're using. In this case, maybe I'm using a Sybase ASA. And you'd want to test that to make sure that it's working correctly. And if not, then you would be able to reconfigure the connection here. And then this screen we can skip for now. This screen we can also skip and use the default value. If your application is using any INI files, you could add those INI files here, and those will be packaged and deployed with the web application. If you're using any DLLs, OCXs, OLAs, etc., those third-party controls, external functions, you can, again, add those here, and they will be automatically packaged and deployed with your application. You can skip this screen. Most people probably do not use command line arguments when they initially start the app. This is, for most customers, you would choose English. The Japanese is actually something we did for a localization. But even if English is used, it would work fine with Spanish, Italian, or any other of those languages, as well as Chinese, Japanese, any of the double byte characters. Next, and that's it. And then at this point, you would click Finish. I'm not going to do that in this case, since this is just an example. But if we did click Finish, it would automatically start the deployment process. And once that's done and the application is deployed, then you could come and take a look at the Appeon Analyzer. The Appeon Analyzer will list all the unsupported features in the application. It provides a summary, so you have a total count, and it will let you drill down so you can take a look at what those features are. And you can actually take this report and save it to various formats, for example, in HTML or in Excel, etc., and email that to your colleagues or share it with other people. So let me actually go back to the presentation and show you what this screen would look like if we did have unsupported features. So in the case of your application, I'm sure there'll at least be just a few. And so here you can see that it would tell you what the unsupported code is. You actually see that. It'll tell you which line number in your application, which object, event, which pibble, what the unsupported feature is, etc. And some of you may be wondering, what are the unsupported features? Well, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of features in PowerBuilder, and Appeon has spent, as I mentioned, nearly a decade trying to make Appeon the perfect solution. And we do support many, 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 but there's still a handful of features that are not supported, and these are the most major ones that are documented here. Now, keep in mind two things. What do you do when you come across an unsupported feature? Well, you can actually probably work around that by doing one of two things. Taking anything that's non-visual in nature, encapsulating that in an NVO, and deploying that to the server side. The reason is that PowerScript code that is running on the server side as an NVO is not subject to the limited features of the browser. So you'll be able to basically keep your code intact. The one limitation, though, obviously, is that it needs to be a non-visual. If it's UI related, then you would not be able to package it into a non-visual object. So for those situations, you'd want to look at rewriting the code at the client side. And remember, the PowerBuilder code can be written in so many different ways to achieve the business objectives. So if we keep focused on what is the business objective, what do we want the user experience to be, there may be another way to write the code that would achieve that. So that is the unsupported feature analyzer. And once you find an unsupported feature, and you can go and you can do your coding. And one thing that Appeon offers is another feature called Code Insight. So for example, imagine I'm writing new code, and as you're writing new code in the script editor, Appeon will automatically bring up a lookup window that will list all the supported functionality that you can use. So the benefit of this is that when you're rewriting your unsupported features, it will help you to not introduce any new unsupported features in the application. Another great tool we offer is if you ever find something is not working on the web, we offer an Appeon debugger. And this debugger looks exactly like the PowerBuilder debugger. You can, for example, insert breakpoints, and you can, step through the code and actually run the web application and debug it, looking at your local global instance variables. You have your call stacks, you have the source browser here. It's really just like the PowerBuilder debugger that you're familiar with, except, debugging the web application. So that'll be useful if after you've cleaned up the unsupported features and deployed your app and something's not working correctly, that will help you to debug that. So let's go ahead and actually take a look at this application. Let me delete this code here. We will save it, and let's click deploy. And the first time you deploy your application, you will use a full deploy. Subsequent times you can use incremental, that is much faster. It will only deploy the objects that have been modified or added. And the whole process is pretty fast. In step one, your objects, data windows, menus, etc. are all exported. In the second step, the web files are generated, and step three, they're deployed to your server. So now we can go ahead and actually run our application on the web. And here you can see we have a login screen, and we have multi-level menus. We have toolbars with tooltips. We can go ahead and open that. And here you can see, just like a PowerBuilder interface, we have tabs and windows and tree views, master detail data window. As I click on the different customer names, you can see the detail records below. We could even use the key and navigate through that, and you can see how fast that is. And that is, Appeon has been really tuned to be high performance. In fact, we're using our own Ajax engine, not the default one from Microsoft, to make it super high performance. Now we can take a look and search by different fields. For example, customer ID will bring up an edit mask, which is great because it prevents the user from entering incorrect data and prevent a mistake from happening in the first place. We can select order type and select from different. And here we can see a list of all of our internet orders. Now imagine we have a new order coming in. Now you can see we have MDI. These are not IE browser pop-up windows that clutter your taskbar. These are true MDI within a single tab of my IE8 browser here, or IE7. And you can actually minimize these and maximize them. You can even close them and get them out of the way and let you multitask, which typically you cannot do on a standard web application, which goes page by page by page like a book, which really doesn't fit an application model well. So let's go ahead and type in a customer ID, and you can see right away, before I've done anything, it's already called the database. It looked up this ID. It did not exist, so it's come back with an error message that the customer does not exist. So I can pull up this customer window that lists all of the customers in our database currently. And this is a response window, so I'm forced to actually, select something. I'm not able to click on anything else until I respond or cancel out. We can quickly add items or remove them, and here we have drop-down data windows with multiple columns and rows with scroll bars. You can select a couple items here. There we go. And then let's take a look at reporting for management. That's always useful. Management loves reports. So here you can see that we have a report here, and I actually have an additional toolbar. So you can see there's a second toolbar. When I click on this one, it disappears. And that's because we've provided some context-sensitive functionality for this window. And if you feel this is taking up too much real estate on your screen, you can actually streamline it. So Appeon offers that feature to remove those text labels. So let's go ahead and click on the different styles and even see the raw data that was used to plot the graphs. Okay. Alrighty, so that's an example of an Appeon application. And here's another great feature. You can see as I went to close the browser, it remembered that I had a transaction in process that had not been saved or completed, and it wants to make sure I want to lose those changes or not. If this was a typical web app, after you filled out the form, if you close the browser, it would just close, and you would lose all of that data that you just entered. So no, we don't need to save that. There we go. Now imagine we need to enhance this application or make a change. How would we do that? Well, let's do something simple. Let's add a command button here. We'll enlarge it a little bit. Here we go. We're overlapping. And right, close. And let's put some very simple code behind it just to illustrate the purpose. And what I'm writing is fully supported on the web. You click Save. And what I would do is run it in PowerBuilder, make sure it works, to have a frame of reference. Here we can see we have the close button exactly overlapping to the millimeter. Okay. And now we will do an incremental deployment, and you will see that this time is even faster. It takes literally just 2 seconds. Click the login. And here you can see just like what we had in the PowerBuilder development environment and just like what we saw in the client-server deployment mode, in a web deployment mode, it looks exactly the same. To the degree overlapping the data window and the picture button. When we click close, it closes. So that's really all it takes to get your applications on the web. And let us continue with a few more slides. Appeon supports deployment to Java and .NET. Our Java deployment is 100% Java code, and our .NET deployment is 100% .NET based on the server using C#. At the client side, we're using standard web technologies, HTML, XML, JavaScript, and ActiveX. It works over the standard HTTP or HTTPS protocols if you want to encrypt, and default IE browser settings and default firewall settings are all compatible. In terms of system requirements, Appeon supports all the latest versions of PowerBuilder going all the way back to version 8. Internet Explorer 8 and 7 and 6 are supported, but I would recommend to use 8 or 7 simply to get the latest and greatest that Microsoft has to offer you. We are currently in the process of working on Firefox support, and that is planned for Appeon 7.0 that is scheduled for 2011. In terms of web and application servers, Appeon is very open, supporting both Java and .NET servers. You're free to use Microsoft.NET, IIS 7 or 6, as well as a number of different vendors' Java servers, including Sybase's EA Server, IBM's WebSphere, Oracle BEA's WebLogic, as well as the open source JBoss. And Appeon is compatible with Windows for .NET and for Java with Windows, Linux, AIX, etc. On the database side, all leading commercial databases are supported. The various versions of Sybase, from the ultralight ASA to the enterprise ASE to the data warehouse IQ. Microsoft SQL servers, Oracle's, and IBM's both Informix and DB2. Now, some of you may be wondering that Appeon looks quite similar to potentially PowerBuilder 11 web forms, and we want to kind of highlight some of those differences and simplify the evaluation for you. Really, from a licensing perspective, PowerBuilder 11 web forms does not have any additional license costs. When you purchase PowerBuilder 11, you will also have the web form functionality. Appeon is an add-on, as we mentioned. It does not replace PowerBuilder. It adds onto it. So there is an additional cost with Appeon. but we feel that cost pays for itself in just a short amount of time, maybe even a few months. With PowerBuilder, you'll be maintaining in the PowerBuilder IDE. Appeon is exactly the same. PowerBuilder Web Forms is excellent for new light web development. If you have a single screen, you're looking to put one data window on there, it works great for that. But if you're taking a large existing application that has very complex coding, uses PFC, uses third-party controls, you will find that Appeon will give you certain advantages there. It will offer greater feature support, so you will lose less functionality and you will have to do less work. It also offers much better performance and scalability because it has been tuned for those very complex situations. And really just overall, if you factor including a license cost, you're looking at an overall lower investment. And that is why where Appeon still today is the #1 choice. And there's actually an article written in PowerBuilder Developer Journal that compares the two. And so feel free to take a look at that. The URL is on the screen, or you could just search PBDJ for that article. So by using Appeon together with PowerBuilder technologies, you'll be able to future-proof your existing application and your skills. You'll be able to deploy to a desktop Windows environment with PowerBuilder if you're looking to do a client-server deployment. With Appeon, we can take you to the web, Java, or .NET, and Pocket Builder allows you to transition and leverage your existing skills as well as some of your existing code to go into a mobile environment. So just to summarize, Appeon can modernize PowerBuilder for you by converting your existing applications in just months or weeks. It will enable you to work much faster than a typical ASP.NET or JSP developer or coder by working in PowerBuilder's 4GL environment and utilizing Appeon's automatic deployment. And most importantly, you'll be able to make your end users very happy. They will be very productive working with a very rich user interface and rich functionality. At the end of the day, that's really our mission as developers, engineers, IT managers, is to cater to the end users and build systems they want to use that makes them happy. So thank you very much for your time. That concludes our webcast today. If you have any questions, feel free to actually email that to us or submit that through the interface, and we will respond to that right away. So I will transition this over to Megan, and she has some last closing remarks for you. Thank you.
So I just want to thank everyone for attending today. We'll send all of you a link to the recorded presentation tomorrow. You can see it online. We'll also stick around for a couple minutes if you have any questions. Again, we'll answer them by email, but feel free to type them into the question box, and we'll get right back to you. Please take a moment to fill out the short survey at the end so that we can make sure to tailor PowerBuilder TV to what you want to see. If you have any feedback, don't hesitate to contact us at the email address on the screen. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to register for our upcoming webinars. We have an exciting schedule coming up, and we hope to see you all there. Thank you.